Well, welcome to the Holocaust Memorial and Tolerance Center's Curator's Corner. My name is Thorin Tritter. I'm the Museum and Programming Director at the Holocaust Memorial and Tolerance Center, which is located in Glen Cove, New York. Before I start, I want to mention that our building is open. So I hope that this program and my others will encourage you to come and view these objects and images in person in our building. And I also want to encourage you, if you have questions during my program, to please use the Q&A feature of Zoom, type those questions in, and I'll make sure to get to them at the end of the program. Okay, today I want to talk about, this image, a large photo that faces visitors as they enter our second gallery. This gives you a crisper view of that image. You can see that the photo captures a massive gathering of German men who look much like soldiers, except they're holding shovels rather than rifles. And when I say massive, I'll just point out that not only are there ranks and ranks of men going on pretty much as far as the eye can see, but there's an equally large group off to the right and no doubt off to the left as well. So this is really a very large crowd, although a little blurry on the edges. Here is our caption. As it says, this is a photograph of the Reich's Labor Service Corps at the 1934 Nazi Party rally. And I want to give you a bit of background about both the Nazi Party rallies and the Labor Service Corps. Let me start with the rallies. The Nazi Party, as you may recall, was established in 1919 as the German Workers' Party, and then added National Socialist to its name in 1920 to make it more appealing. The following year, in 1921, Hitler was named the leader of this young party, but it remained a blip on the political scene of Germany until after the stock market crash in 1929. You can see here in these election results that in 1928, the Nazi Party in the federal elections received less than 3% of the national vote in Germany. But after the stock market crash, that's when the Nazi Party's popularity took off. And in 1932, it gained the most votes of any party in the Reichstag. And in 1933, Hitler was named chancellor. Once in power, Hitler quickly moved to consolidate his authority, perhaps most dramatically with the purge of the Nazi Party in June of 1934, the Night of the Long Knives, which included the murder of more than 80 people. This is a newspaper article that draw attention to an even larger number, but we think about 80 to 100 people, major figures in the Nazi Party, were murdered. And then another example of when Hitler took power, greater power, was after the death of President von Hindenburg in 1934, when Hitler took the title of Führer, or leader. It's important to realize, though, that although Hitler and the Nazi Party secured complete control of the German government and the military, it happened very quickly and through a series of pretty controversial moves. So even though Hitler had power, he still needed to convince the German people that his rise to power constituted a good thing for Germany and that he had wide public support. The Nazi Party rally of 1934 was part of an effort to show Germany that Hitler was going to turn the country around. By 1934, the Nazi Party had been holding annual rallies for more than a decade. The first was held in Munich in 1923. The following year, it was in Weimar. And then beginning in 1927, the Nazis moved their rallies to Nuremberg. Nuremberg was seen as a particularly appropriate city to host the Nazi Party events, partially because the Nazis' strong support in Bavaria, where Nuremberg was located. Also because Nuremberg was relatively central in Germany, so it was convenient for a large group of people. And finally, and perhaps most importantly, because Nuremberg was appealing because it was located where the imperial court of the Holy Roman Emperor had been located. And the Nazis called that, the Holy Roman Empire, the First Reich. And famously, the Holy Roman Emperor Charles IV issued the Golden Bull of 1356, which required that every subsequent Holy Roman Emperor summon their first diet, their first assembly of the court in Nuremberg, instantly making it one of the most important cities of medieval Europe. The imperial castle in Nuremberg, which had been erected in stages from about 1000 on, also became a key structure where all German kings and emperors stayed for a time for more than 600 years. The Nazis wanted to promote themselves as leading the resurgence of Germany and used the location of Nuremberg to help tie themselves to the history of the previously dominant Imperial Germany. Nuremberg had been a central city in the First Reich, and so the Nazis turned to it to make it what they thought would show that it was the Third Reich. This was the Third Reich. The Nazi Party rallies, of course, were very different from the imperial courts of the Holy Roman Emperor, but both shared a goal of using Nuremberg to project an image of strength and dominance to the German people and to the wider world. The Nazi Party rallies were held annually and were highly choreographed, multi-day spectacles that in some years lasted for 7 or 8 days. And they were full of parades, speeches, uniforms, displays of various kinds. The historian Doris Bergen describes the Nazis as having 2 public images, one filled with pageantry and the other based on terror. She says the 2 sides were integrally connected and were both part of the same effort to show strength and to marginalize those who did not embrace the Nazi Party. The party rallies, like the one in 1934 or this one in 1937, were crucial stages for the Nazi pageantry that celebrated the image of a unified Germany, where the Nazi Party was synonymous with the will of the German people. But the pageantry did not hide the terror that was also central to Nazi rule. Anyone the Nazis designated as outsiders, including Jews, the Roma and Sinti, or others who opposed the Nazi regime, were not welcome at these rallies. And indeed, inherent in the celebration of a unified Germany was the exclusion of these other groups. So the pageantry that was embraced by most of Germany was a sign of exclusion to Jews and other victims of Nazi oppression. For the in group, which included the great majority of Germans, the Nazi Party rallies were meant to appeal to the emotions of participants and spectators, revving up their support for the Nazi Party. Particularly after Hitler came to power in 1933, the Nazi Party wanted as many people as possible to attend these rallies in order to highlight the wide public support for what had been just a fringe party 5 years earlier. So every wing of the Nazi Party was given stage time and urged to participate, including the stormtroopers, like you can see here from 1933, the SS, Hitler Youth, like you can see here, the League of German Girls, the military, and the Labor Service Corps. But these participants didn't just come to present in a parade. The party created a true festival atmosphere with music, games, and activities to enjoy. And there was a sense that coming to the Nazi Party rally was helping to create German unity and was a way to show pride in the country as it recovered from the economic depression. Perhaps nothing captures the Nazi vision of the Nazi Party rallies more than Leni Riefenstahl's famous film, Triumph of the Will. In 1933, Leni Riefenstahl had been hired by the Nazi Party to make a propaganda film about the 1933 Nazi Party rally, which she named The Victory of Faith. But the purge of the Nazi leadership that followed the next summer, in the summer of 34, meant that by 1934, the 1933 film included people who the Nazis no longer wanted to celebrate. So Hitler, who had been impressed with Riefenstahl's work, commissioned her to film the 1934 Nazi Party rally and put almost unlimited resources at her disposal. She was able to bring cameras to the front row of events, capturing the spectacle with innovative cinematography. And when the film was released in 1935, it was a masterpiece, although today largely seen as a propaganda piece about the Nazi Party. But she did capture the massive crowds of participants who set up a sea of tents for the 5-day-long event in 1934. And she has a series of shots showing the youthful campers enjoying the camaraderie that lay behind the massive spectacles. She also captured a series of shots of the Labor Service Corps that's depicted in our photograph. And I want to try and give you a sense of the scale of the Nazi Party rallies. The Nazi Party rally grounds stand on the outskirts of Nuremberg. Even today, you can visit them, where a park had been created in 1906 and where a Hall of Honor had been built in the 1920s. But after Hitler's rise to chancellor, he officially named Nuremberg the city of the Nazi Party rallies and began constructing a series of monumental buildings on a 4.5 or 4.25 square mile tract in the southeastern part of the city. This is a map of what he envisioned. It includes the Marsfeld, named after Mars, the god of wars, which was never completed, but was planned to be a field measuring 750 yards by 1,000 yards, so 10 football fields long and over 7 football fields wide. There was also the Zeppelin Field, named because of a prototype Zeppelin that landed there in 1909. The field could hold 100,000 performers on the grass and had a grandstand that could accommodate another 60,000. This gives you a sense of the space when it opened in 1937. The largest planned building in the area was an outdoor stadium. It was planned to provide seating for 400,000. So you think, I don't know, the large stadiums in America today hold 60, 70, 80,000. Here we're talking about a stadium for 400,000. Construction was also started, but never finished, on another building, the Congress Hall, that would have had indoor seating for 50,000 people. These are the ruins that still stand and are used as a museum today. It was meant to rise about twice the height that it ever got to, so imagine double the height here, and then have a roof covering the interior courtyard. Our photograph was taken in the Luitpold Arena, which was the oldest part of the Nazi Party rally ground park, named for a Prince Regent of Bavaria from the 1800s. Here you see an overhead look at the grounds, which could fit 150,000 people. This is one of the more iconic photographs from Nuremberg and shows the altar-like installation along one side of the field, which was dominated by 3 gigantic banners in the middle and 2 bronze eagles on the end. This photo and our photograph both come from the 1934 Nazi Party rally, which I mentioned before was particularly important for Hitler because it came just a few months after the Night of the Long Knife. So Hitler needed to project an image of not only political unity, but national unity. And he wanted to show that the nation stood behind him, behind the Nazi Party. He also sought to use the Nazi Party rally to re-emphasize the messages that had secured him his position in power, rallying the public behind his calls for nationalistic pride in Germany, rearming despite the Versailles Treaty, and putting Germans back to work through massive public works projects. That brings me back to the Reichs Labor Service Corps, which was an organization that fit with all of those goals, even if its roots predated the rise of the Nazi Party. The origin of the Reich Labor Service Corps goes back to June of 1931 during the Weimar Republic, when the Chancellor Brüning, established a voluntary labor service as a state-sponsored employment organization to provide for civic and land improvement projects. The idea, of course, of using volunteers and putting them to work on public works projects was not unique to Germany. Franklin Roosevelt in the United States established a similar organization, the Civilian Conservation Corps, the CCC, in 1933 as part of his New Deal to provide jobs for the unemployed. And like the CCC, Chancellor Brüning's voluntary labor service sought to provide work to men who were unable to find other employment during the economic depression. By November of 1932, more than 285,000 Germans were employed in this voluntary labor service in Germany. In addition to the voluntary labor service, the Nazi Party had its own labor program, which was called the National Socialist Labor Service, the NSAD in German, which worked on a smaller scale to provide work for unemployed Nazis. When Hitler came to power, he sought to expand the existing state program and merge it with the party program. In July of 1934, he changed the name of the NSAD, the Nazi Party Labor Service, to the Reichs Labor Service, the RAD. The following year, it was reestablished as an amalgamation of all the previous labor organizations, all combined together, and the RAD continued to operate until the end of World War II. A close look at our photograph shows the symbol of the Reichs Labor Service and gives a hint of the organizational structure. I know this is a little bit blurry, but I think you can make out that the hats displayed in our photograph include the logo for the RAD, the Reichs Labor Service. And it has a shovel emblazoned with the swastika emerging from two sheaves of wheat. The other insignia you can see is on the men's upper arm. There you can see the patches shaped like the tops of shovels that include a number. The RAD was composed of 33 work districts that mirrored the subdivisions of the Nazi Party across the country. Each of those districts was overseen by an officer with a headquarters staff, and then under each district were between 6 and 8 battalion-sized work groups of 1,200 to 1,800 men. These groups were divided into 6 company-sized work units, so very much like a military division. The large number that you see on the sleeve refers to the battalion, and then the smaller number designated the company. So again, much like in the military with a formal hierarchical chain of command that could be readily adapted to military needs. In 1934, the Reichs Labor Service had several key goals. First, it was a way to put men back to work, as I said. It was also, though, seen by the Nazis as a way to educate and promulgate the Nazi ideology. And finally, it was a way around the restrictions imposed by the Versailles Treaty on military training. At the time that our photograph is taken, in September of 1934, the planning and the operation of the Reichs Labor Service was still being developed. But with the relaunch the following June, the Nazi approach was clarified. Starting on June 26, 1935, all German men who were between the age of 18 and 25, except Jews, were required to do 6 months of community work in the Reich Labor Service. The men were housed in camps spread around the country, and each was supplied with a shovel and a uniform. They were tasked with agricultural work, like helping with the harvest or draining swamps or cultivating new farmland, as well as construction projects like building the new autobahns in Germany, but also military fortifications. But perhaps more than anything else, the focus was on military-style training, building a bridge between the Hitler Youth programs and the mandatory military service, which was started in March of 1935. The wording in the Reich Labor Service Act, which was enacted in June of 1935, is, I think, interesting. It lays out a description in 4 sentences. First, it says that the Reich Labor Service is honorary service to the German people. So it is a public service for the public good. Second, it states that all young Germans of both sexes are obliged to serve their people in the Reich Labor Service. So it is mandatory service, although later in the law it clarifies that at least in 1935, it was a call of only men from the ages of 18 to 25. The third descriptive sentence says the Reich Labor Service is supposed to educate the German youth in the spirit of National Socialism to the national community and to the true work conception, above all, to the due respect for manual labor. This gets at the importance of teaching Nazi ideology and the celebration of manual labor as the Nazis proclaimed it. And then finally, the law says the Reich Labor Service is intended to carry out charitable work. Perhaps not surprisingly, it says nothing about military training. You'll recall that the Versailles Treaty, which Germany had signed after their defeat in World War I, had several provisions that sought to disarm Germany and prevent it from ever being a military threat again. These included the limitation of the military to only 100,000 people, that down from over 4 million in 1918, the last year of the war. It also eliminated the German military general staff the military leadership that controlled all divisions of the military and the Navy. And it banned the manufacture of armored cars, tanks, submarines, and airplanes. In the Reich labor service, Hitler saw a way to conduct military training and prepare German men for the army without actually having an army. Hitler, however, didn't bother with that ruse for very long. In March of 1935, a few months after our photo was taken, he publicly announced that Germany would no longer adhere to the Versailles Treaty and would begin military conscription to build a standing army of 480,000. France and England, unwilling to go to war to sustain the Versailles provisions, didn't respond. By 1938, the army in Germany had grown to 600,000 and included a further 48 tank battalions and a massive air force. But in 1934, Hitler was not yet ready to publicly break with the Versailles Treaty, and the Labor Service Corps provided the cover. Our photograph offers a view of Hitler's concerns only a few months into his role as Führer and highlights his use of pageantry to rally support for his new regime. So I will stop there. If you have questions, please type them into the Q&A windows and I will look at them. Let me also take a moment to remind you of a couple of upcoming events. On next Wednesday, December 8th at 11, I'll be back for my next Curator's Corner. I'll be talking about a child's shoe from Auschwitz that we have on display. I'll be talking about our particular shoe, as well as the Holocaust survivor who donated it to us, and 2 other shoes that he donated to other organizations. On Thursday, December 9th at noon, we're hosting a program with the executive director of the Israel Forever Foundation, Dr. Ilana Heidemann, who'll be talking about the way the Holocaust is often universalized and the way Holocaust history is often misused, both of which serve to undermine the public's understanding of the Holocaust. And one more program to mention: on Sunday, December 12th at 6 p.m., we're going to be holding the next program in our Sunday with Survivor series. In this program, child survivor Eva Kessner will share information about her Viennese family's survival in Nazi-occupied France and their harrowing escape to Switzerland in 1942 at the height of the Final Solution. You can find a full list of our programs on our website at www.hmtcli.org and then click on the Events tab. I hope you'll also go to our website and make a donation. And in fact, let me add one more comment. Beginning tomorrow and running through Saturday, if you do any shopping at the Wheatley Plaza or Americana Manhasset, you can sign up in advance and name HMTC as your charity. Then 25% of your purchases will be donated to us. So do some fun shopping and support us at the same time. Okay, let me look and see if you've got any questions. Thanks very much for tuning into our program today, my program today, and I look forward to seeing you at other programs soon. Be well. Thank you.